Hello and welcome to today's Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, and the head of sport and the Guardian, Shane Brophy. Shane, we haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. How's tricks been with you?
Not too bad. A bit dramatic. I suppose I had the first week was a bit of time away, and last week I suppose a little bit of a small family issue. Thankfully, everything is rolled and everything is going well. So yeah, it was a bit of downtime in the middle of the championship. So didn't anticipate coming on this week. Now thinking Tip would be sort of limping into the All Ireland series, but that's how we are.
Yeah, I mean, the Tipperary performance against Waterford, far from impressive, really. A few days have passed at this stage. 124 to 21 point loss in Temple Stadium against Waterford. I mean, it really wasn't impressive, was it?
No, like 6 points was kind.
Yeah.
I think the true reflection would be the scores from play. It was 117 to 10 points. I think that's a fair reflection of Waterford's dominance on the day. Like from 5 minutes in, you sense Tip were in bother. And you were hoping maybe 10, 15 minutes in, maybe to get the dirty diesel out of the system from the week before, and then they'll settle down. But it never looked likely. Okay, there was a spell after half time where they raised the gallop, but look, there's no doubt about it. Look, they for whatever reason, I think it was a combination of physical and mental that they just weren't able to get to the right pitch to compete. And look, fair play to Waterford. They came and brought a big performance, and look, they have their own issues now in terms of how they read into what happened last weekend. Like, I think that maybe the worst thing you could do is read too much into a Waterford thing, but I suppose from their point of view, the big thing was they got a group of players with nothing to play for to perform, which is big for them. But back to Tip, look, a big grounding. Look, there was no doubt about it. People probably getting a small bit excited after the Limerick game, saying we were back, and like we're back being competitive. But there's no doubt about it. It's putting consecutive games back to back is the next level. And look, the way I look at it, Tip's schedule this year was kind. They got a game, 2 week break, a game, 2 week break. The first time they had to go 2 weekends in a row, they flopped. And I think that's something Liam Cahill and the management have got to try and maybe delve into, see why that happened.
Yeah, well, like, you remember Dan McCormack after one of the games that was on TV, the Limerick game, he was talking about how they had a lot of fitness work that they needed to do. So maybe, this is an ongoing process. But just even to look at the path to the All-Ireland from here, if Tipperary were to go that far, so just potentially, preliminary quarterfinals 17th, All-Ireland quarterfinals then will be a week after. So you're looking at Offaly first, and then basically the losers of the provincial finals would be up against one of them. Then the All-Ireland semi-final will be a couple of weeks after that, and a couple of weeks after that. So should Tipperary go deep into the championship again, and there's no foregone conclusion there, they won't have to worry about playing a Limerick and then another top challenger, a week later. I mean, you're right there on the border with Offaly, and I'm sure there's going to be a bit of crack developing in the next week or two, more so maybe from the Tip side than the Offaly side, because they'll be expecting Tipperary to win that game. But it ain't like, if you're to use a boxing parlance,
let's not give them Antrim. They're the best county in the world for getting, if they perceive slight against them and use it as motivation. So we just want to watch our words for the next 2.5 weeks.
Well, I'm more of a call a spade a spade.
There's no problem. Like, it's just like I'm up at this neck of the woods. I know their mentality. Like, they're.
Well, my mother works in the Obama Plaza, so I mean, you're right there on the border all the time, so she'll be hearing it a lot. But like, realistically, it should amount to, in boxing parlance, a tune-up fight for a big game after. That doesn't mean I think Tipperary will hammer Offaly. But I actually think Tipperary might labour a little bit in this game, and Offaly will want to put in a big performance after losing the Joe McDonagh final. And for them, it's good that they have a 3-week gap, that they don't have to go the week later. But it's kind of I mean, are you looking forward to a clash with Offaly? It's been a while since.
I would be, like, it was 2014 the last time we played, and I'm sure while they'll be bitterly disappointed not to have won the McDonagh Cup, which was their aim. Like, the big prize is getting up to Leinster next year, and they're not there. But I'm sure Johnny Kelly and the boys, and I'm sure having Johnny and Martin Maher and Brendan in there, like they'll have an insight into maybe the strengths and weaknesses of a couple of Tip players, so that'll help them in that. But yeah, look, there's no doubt. I'd say Offaly are probably feeling a little low this week, very low. Like in fact, like that was a brilliant game in terms of excitement last Saturday night against Carlow. We might talk about maybe that later on again, but yeah, it's. I think if Offaly win the 20 final on Sunday, God, I think they'll be carrying serious momentum, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Johnny Kelly maybe decides that preliminary quarter final is our first prep for next year, and he might draft in a couple of the 20s into the panel just to say, okay, next year is starting in the preliminary quarter final. We'll use that game as our first game of next year, if you know what I mean. Maybe get the likes of the guys that are physically strong enough, maybe the likes of Dan Ravenhill, who looks ready. Well, I wouldn't say almost ready, but he probably looks like a guy that would stand up to some of the physical exchanges, even at 18 years, 19 years of age. Like so, but yeah, look. I'd have no doubt after the manner of the Tip defeat that I'd be shocked if not every Tipperary player selected on the 17th isn't absolutely hopping on the field in O'Connor Park and is focused to make up for what happened last Sunday.
Yeah, and actually the under-20s this Sunday, that's going to be some. I mean, there'll surely be 40,000 people at.
Yeah, I think both stands are already sold out. Like so, and sure, like it's hard to know. Clare should bring a decent crowd. Like they have a great chance in the they're underdogs in the minor final, but they'll have a chance. Galway, probably one of the better minor. Okay, Galway always have good minor teams. This is probably one of the better ones they've had down through the last few years. And look, Cork against Offaly. Cork, I think I fancy Cork to win, but if there's one team that never feels inferior to anyone, it's Offaly. And
no group of underage players is as used to massive crowds as the Offaly underage team,
absolutely,
and that could count for something.
Yeah, absolutely. I know they're used to it. They went, what was it, full house in Nolan Park last year. It won't phase them a small bit.
Has there been a more? Are you speaking of the Galway minors? Has there? When was the last time we had as highly touted a minor as Aaron Nyland? Because he was highly touted last year, and he's still minor.
Yeah. Would you go back to? Like I suppose I don't know. There has to be somebody since Joe Canning. I don't know. Was Austin Gleeson the same back in 2014 or 2013? I don't think so. I suppose Tony Kelly was probably definitely one as well. Like so. Yeah, I think that's I think I might have mentioned it on the show a few weeks ago that we haven't had one in Tip for a long time. I think going back, I'd say Owen Kelly was probably the last one we really had, and you'd love to see maybe Tip getting maybe one or two of these prodigious talents coming through, if you know what I mean. Like it just adds something extra to your team, if you know what I mean.
Detox 101 says Owen Cody. Shane, would you not be concerned with Offaly's pace in their forwards versus Tip's lack of pace in the backs? Is that any concern?
I wouldn't have said Offaly or anything were too pacey. Like Owen Cahill wouldn't be quick. Brian Dignan wouldn't be quick.
They're good hurlers.
They're good hurlers. There's no doubt about it. Like, look, I think if we reflect back to last Sunday, I wouldn't. Like I did my report or my analysis this week. I actually didn't go into too much detail on tactics or anything, because I just thought Tip were just so far off the pace that you couldn't read an awful lot into it, like in terms of why did they do this and why did they do that. Because like I think no matter what Tipperary wanted to do last Sunday, they just weren't able. Like it, I don't know, Liam Cahill wasn't using the Limerick game as an excuse, but I have no doubt that the 7 days, and it should have been enough, but it wasn't. And I think that's the management are going to have to dissect that. How and why did we find were we not ready in 7 days? Like, and look, that's something they're going to have to deal with if they get through Offaly, because they'll only have 7 days to get ready then for Galway or Limerick. Like they'll be hoping maybe the Offaly game won't be overly taxing, but they'll still have to go through that 7 day, if it happens, a 7 day period to get ready for a quarter final.
But surely it's a personnel issue. There's only so deep you can go into a panel before ultimately, you do start to, come up a little bit short. Look at all the injuries at this stage. Jason Ford, and just even to name the guys that you wish you would
Cathal
have.
Barrett, Jake Morris,
and I mean, Cathal Barrett and Jake Morris is taking basically all your pace out of your team, really, the fastest guys. And then the other guys who would add that athleticism, Craig Morgan, who it seems isn't that far away after the cruciate last year. Barry Heffernan, I'm not sure, he did come back for the club recently, as far as I know, Nina. So you'd be hoping he could be back soon, but maybe not.
I think Liam's more or less written him off, I think, for this year.
Cadell, Brown, I mean, it'd be great to have all these lads.
Yeah.
Niall O'Mara, I thought it was, when I saw that Niall O'Mara was named on the panel, and especially with Tip flopping so much, you would have thought, was he not worth 5 or 10 minutes just to see what's the body like out there? He looked like he's hitting the ground running. So I thought it was a little unusual not to use him.
Yeah, I know. I suppose.
Well, they had 5 subs used already, I suppose.
Yeah, he did. I suppose just in terms of that, I thought the team selection was a little odd. I would have thought they went horses for courses against Limerick. So why not go horses for courses against Waterford? In terms of, would Johnny Ryan not have been a better option in terms of legs or against Waterford? And would maybe a Sean Ryan or a Conor Bowen have been a better option than Seamus Callanan from the start? Maybe they took the decision that this is a great chance for Shamey to get massive minutes under his belt, and he got 70, I think, as far as he did get 3 points of play, but there was an awful lot of times where that 50-50 ball went in there and either Mark Fitzgerald or Early Daly beat him for it. And I would have thought maybe a Shawnee Ryan or a Conor Bowe might have done a little bit better, or would have had the extra legs maybe to make that ball stick. But I just thought overall, we didn't get an awful lot right last weekend from the puck outs. And I know there was an awful lot of criticism of why after 15 minutes Tip sat off the Waterford puck out. But if Tip pushed up, Waterford were just going to hand pass the ball over any Tip lads' heads, and there'd be even worse problems. It's just that they just physically did not look able to do anything last weekend. And I would take 4 players as being the engine room of that Tip team: Dan McCormack, Seamus Kennedy, Conor Stakeham, and Alan Tynan. All 4 had no influence on the game whatsoever in terms of doing the grunt work, the tackling, the hooking, the blocking, the getting in their face, that sort of forcing turnovers. So we got 15 points in turnovers against Limerick. I don't know how many. I'd say we got very few turnovers against Waterford because we just literally couldn't lay a finger on them.
Yeah, and do you think now with further injuries like Brian McGrath, and I mean I don't know, have confirmation in terms of the injury he had, and Grode O'Connor tripping over the cameraman set up there on the sideline. I mean, when you think that Barry Heffernan did his cruciate because there was a stray water bottle as he was knocked over the side of the pitch, and then the cameraman, you just hope that that's not a serious one. He tried to limp on, but
there was rumors yesterday of a break, but I think that's been downplayed. I don't think the management. I think they were still awaiting, full scans yesterday. But I think whether it's a break or it's nearly a break is probably better than ligament damage in the ankle, because ankle ligaments can be slow to heal. I would say it'd be hard to see Grode O'Connor playing this side of an All-Ireland semi-final if Tipperary get that far.
Yeah, and without him, and it's harder to see Tip getting to an All-Ireland.
You're hoping Jason Ford is back. Jason was effectively ruled out up to a Munster final. So will he be back for Offaly in 6 days later than that date? Probably thinking touch and go. So we got to go and find another free taker. Look, there's an awful lot of guys who can take frees. There's no doubt about it. But it's you're going then. You're heading for your third free taker in All Ireland series, which is not ideal.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned earlier that maybe Johnny Kelly had drafted in a couple of the under-20s. Are we at a stage with Tipperary with the seniors that if they don't get too many back very soon, that they'll need to call on a couple of those, even as backup, but just see, to bring something.
I would be thinking the panel is getting very thin at the moment with all the.
But a lot of the under-20s are very small, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're not overly quick either. Peter or Sean Kennelly was probably the best of them, but he's a big physical guy. He's not overly quick, and I suppose the player probably coming into this campaign, you would have thought maybe was at the front of the queue was Peter McGarry, but I don't think he lit up the campaign either. Like, so, like, I'm sure maybe there's probably with the amount of injuries and look the way things are going with Tip, there's no guarantee that they won't pick up a couple more over the next couple of weeks, which in training. Like, so, I did think it was odd at half time that that there was no subs made. I just thought it was crying out for freshness. And I know Aline probably said to the 15, okay, you gave Conor Bowe a pass because he only came on as a sub, like, but okay, you other 14, you got us into this mess, get us out of it. But like, there was no sense that they had the energy to get it. Like, I thought maybe it was the ideal time maybe for a Johnny Campion or a Podge Campion. Like, Podge Campion we saw him earlier on in the campaign. He is able to cut a line through a middle of a team, make a few runs. Johnny Campion is a bit elusive. I thought maybe Sean Ryan could have come in a bit earlier, just to youngish guys who have something to prove, and they might just take the fight to Waterford, if you know what I mean.
I was just looking at it there. The last time Tipperary played Offaly in the championship, as you mentioned, it was 2014. Tip won 5-25 to 120. Callan with 210. Jason Ford got himself a point. Bonner got 1-1. Noah McGrath got a point. So an awful lot of the same names are still there. And on the other side, Shane Dooley, he scored a point. He's been on the road since 2007, which is some going to still be involved there. If we're to call a spade based on the energy levels last weekend, it's kind of worked out. You'd love to be in a Munster final, but realistically, if Tip had to go into a Munster final next weekend, if the energy was dropped even lower, you could be looking at an awful beating because Clare wouldn't have played for 3 weeks.
Oh, Jesus, I tell you, I was saying to somebody up in the field in Nora last night, I think Tip it's worked out better for Tip now, just in this situation with the way the injuries are. Like, Tip would be so short-handed against Clare in the Munster final, it'd be scary. Like, and 2-week break, okay, you'd probably anticipate the players would be motivated and hyped up, and you get a better level of performance, but like, you'd be going into playing a Clare team who'd be rested. Okay, they'd be short Conor Cleary. They'd have the extra motivation of having lost to Tip in the first round, giving up a couple of goals. So, like, I think in some ways it's worked out better for Tip in that Cahill probably has them now in his grasper. He'll get them refocused. Fingers crossed to get through Offaly without any problems. I would think, this is just my projection, I would fancy Galway to win the Leinster final, just with Adrian Mullen ruled out for Kilkenny, Mikey Butler's injured, Martin Keown pulled a hamstring. I think Kilkenny will be up against it in Leinster, and I think Tip would the challenge Kilkenny would present, while this would be tough. It's very traditional style of hurling. Like, I think it was something Sean Flynn mentioned in his article in the paper this week in Third Eye, that Tip won't come up against another team like Waterford in the championship, like, where they're nearly meticulous and methodical in how to try and break it down. Like Limerick, we sort of all know how Limerick play, and maybe Clare. Like, Waterford, I don't know if you agree, Waterford sort of play the game a lot differently than other teams, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, like, they've odds. I think it was more orthodox against Tip in terms of, like, right.
But just in terms of how they work the ball up the field, like it's like in relays, and the guy working in even 3s and 5s, like popping the ball and off the shoulder and going again, like, so just
which I think can work very well. It's just it's just so odd seeing a team hitting their puckouts and the furthest player back is on their own 45. So you've got that full 45 emptied out. And if Tipperary were full of energy the other day, maybe Tip, like Clare and Cork in the previous games, could have also really taken advantage of it. I think it's such a risky tactic.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I think it was Davy Fitz is obviously delighted to get that victory. He really needed it, and and that'll probably keep him in the job for next year. But he probably came up against the perfect team at the perfect time.
Oh, absolutely.
To be able to work.
No doubt about it. And, like, I thought, I nearly look forward to the Tip Waterford match next year, because I would think Liam Cahill would be spitting fire. Like, I think Liam was very put out by Davy's comments that
emotional baggage.
That more or less Waterford were left in a heap by him. Like, I think that's terribly unfair. Like, Jesus, like, I would have thought it was the players left Liam Cahill in the heap the way they finished up the Clare game last year. Like they down tools, like so, and like I just thought what Liam Cahill did last year, did he deserve Davy Fitz throwing that back in his face? He certainly didn't. I think if you poll all those Waterford players, would they have good time for Liam Cahill or bad time? I'd say the vast majority say good time, and they probably understood that when your home county comes calling, it's very, very hard to say no.
Yeah.
And in fairness, he rejected them 12 months ago previous, and it was very, very hard to say no the second time.
Like we can't expect Tipperary to go from. I mean, Tip have won one championship game out of the last 10, so it's very difficult to imagine that Tip will start stringing victories together. But there has been a couple of games left behind. The Cork game was left behind Tipperary, so was the Limerick game in some respects, and obviously it was brilliant to kind of claim a draw as well from a losing position at the same time. But, Tip have been front runners in these games, and even the Clare game as well. Maybe there's it's going to be difficult coming from the base that Tipperary didn't have, I suppose, all of a sudden being able to see these games out. What did you make of Rhys Shelley? It was only his second championship start. He made the mistake which allowed Deise Hutchinson get in. But I also thought Deise Hutchinson swung a hurley across a man. So
it was one of those, like, did he I watched it back, if he did he touch the ball first or did he touch the helmet first? It's it was a very, very tight one. Like, so look, I try and give
it could be irrelevant because if you're going to hit a guy on the helmet anyway.
But look, I suppose, all comes to all, like, Shelley probably shouldn't have fumbled the ball. I know that in the first place anyway. I know the sun was in his eyes, but look, I suppose I think it was one of the first or second puck outs Reece had. It was a mid-range puck out that went wrong, and it's sort of symptomatic of how the day flew after that. You had so many things fumbling and lads lethargic, and even when John McGrath came on, Rhys Shelley hit a 60-yard ball to him in space, nobody on him, and John looked, he never controlled it and went out for a sideline ball. Just everything that you wanted maybe from a team that was just not fully tuned in. And look, happened. And look, it's as much in the players as on the management. Like, they've all got to take responsibility for it. I'm sure they will this week. And you'd just like to think in terms of how they deal with the next 3 weeks is important, because like Liam Cahill had a 3-week window last year with Waterford where he got a chance to recharge the batteries after the Limerick game before Cork, and they came out very flat against Cork. Like, so you'd like to think he would have learned from that in terms of how to get the right level of energy and edge back in Tip's play. Like, so, like, I would have thought this week is the ideal time nearly for down and tools, for do very little. Next week, get a huge block of work in, then taper back for Offaly. Because, like, I would have thought next week is a massive opportunity to get a huge amount of work done, because after that, per se, if Tip get all the way to an All-Ireland final, there's very, very little chance for a lot of physical work to be done. Like, because everything is 2 weeks on. Like, so you're more or less recovering and then trying to taper up for a next game if there is one.
Yeah, and like, there's a lot of players there that are 28, 29, and the bodies could probably do with that little bit of a rest.
Yeah.
Just in terms of Waterford then, the Billy Nolan rumour playing sweeper, that had been floating around for a few days, so that wasn't a shock. He plays there with WIT, or is it set to Waterford. Patrick Fitzgerald, you just wonder why he wasn't thrown in from the start in this championship, and Deise Hutchinson, why wasn't he played closer to goals? Like, no matter what way you want to tactically set up, you still have to put like the best players in the best positions, and to me, it seemed obvious enough that at least one of the two of them should have been close to goal all year.
Oh, definitely. Like, I suppose, look, they were worried about maybe putting Patrick in too so is he only 18 years of age, maybe giving him too much too soon. But look, it was probably the perfect game to say, look, there's nothing at stake here really. And look, he showed that probably next year him and Hutchinson will probably be a 2-man full forward line. It has to be that. Stephen Bennett looked back to his best last Sunday. Like, I still look at that Waterford squad, and if you get Barron and De Bourke back and Gleeson, I still think they have probably one of the deepest panels in the All-Ireland series. And if they're right next year, playing properly, playing a style of hurling that gets the very best out of them, I think they're All-Ireland contenders next year. And then people might laugh at that, but it's just looking at the talent level they have.
Yeah, so
that's the one thing Waterford have got to be frustrated with. They have probably more talent than a lot of the teams left, the 6 or 8 teams left in the All-Ireland series, and they've been knocked out of the championship early twice in a row.
What do you make of the decision by Clare? Like, so the talk was they wanted the Munster final down in Thurles, Limerick wanted it in Cork, and ultimately the counties have put their heads together, and it's going to be in the Gaelic ground. So it's a home Munster final basically for Limerick. What do you make of the decision? Say, do you know what? Let's do it at your house. And what they're also saying is to their supporters, let's make it easy on you because it's only 10 minutes out the road for a lot of them.
Yeah, I get all that. The one thing I was thinking, did Limerick manipulate all this to get what they wanted?
Probably.
Yeah. Like, did Limerick know if they played their cards right that they'd end up getting the match played in Limerick? Just
Probably.
say, if they knew Clare were going to ask for Thurles, so if we asked for Cork, and they probably thought, okay, if we win the Cork vote, Clare will probably come back to us and say, do you want to play it in Limerick instead? And they end up getting actually what they wanted, which is to play it in Limerick. So, look, in terms of convenience, it's grand. In terms of, I don't think it'll make a huge amount of difference, Clare. I'm sure Clare probably got an extra perk in terms of we want 60% of the stand tickets or something. I'm sure that was probably the negotiation in terms of. Well, I think the terrace tickets are public sale. I think the stand tickets are all going through the clubs. So, but isn't it? I did think initially it was Brian Lohan putting it up to his players to say, lads, if we're going to end our 25-year wait for Munster, a perfect way to do it is beat Limerick in their own backyard for the second time in 7 weeks. Like, and you think if they do that, Jesus, like, they'll be hard to stop to win the All-Ireland, wouldn't they?
They will, yeah, but the loss of Conor Cleary is huge because, who's the obvious person to go in if he's not available? And there is no obvious answer. Like, maybe David McInerney will go in there, but it probably
has to be, because like they don't have. Look, he might have to pull a rabbit out of the hat for something. Like he might.
Tried that last year and it backfired in the All-Ireland final.
But he have to put John Conlon. Yeah, we have to John Conlon back there. Like it's. Yeah, I'm sure. Look, they'll have been taught that one over. Like in terms of, excuse me, in terms of what they have to do. Like, but look, it's going to be. It should be a fantastic game, and like in terms of. If you're any of the other teams left in the All-Ireland, like you think, Jesus, like these two are going to cut particularly for the loser. I think it's going to be maybe it could be a game that maybe is a game too far. Like, okay, maybe the fact that the loser will probably get Dublin in a quarter, that probably will have enough to survive. But like you think from what we've seen of these battles the last couple of years, that I'd like to think maybe it's going to take an awful lot out of both teams, and that the winner will need the 4 weeks to be ready.
Yeah, just like last year. Yeah, you'd imagine that either team will, more or less.
Struggle. Like you think, in terms of convenience, it's perfect. But I would have thought, like I don't like this politics thing that's coming into venue selection. Like the venue should have been the biggest venue, and like you think there's 39,000-40,000, like there's 6,000 people who won't get to the Munster final that would have been if it was in Thurles. Like, so I just think why, like I'm sure I don't know whether Cork were promised it at the start of the year or what, but like I don't know, like the amount of people were giving me a bit of cheek last Sunday about all Tip were talking about was worrying about the venue, but sure, all that bullshit last week was coming from Cork and it was coming from Clare. Cork because they wanted the final, and Clare because they were in the final. Like, there's nobody in Tip worried about where the venue was because we weren't in it last week. Like, and it was a stick that was thrown at Tip that never originated from Tip. Like, so
yeah, it was an easy one to be thrown around.
Yeah,
just it seems you mentioned Offaly there a while ago. They came up short in the Joe McDonagh final, finished 229 to Carlow, 131 to Offaly. Like, that was some roller coaster of a game. Very harsh, the red card, I felt, during normal time. Letter the law and said I hadn't touched the helmet and all that kind of stuff. But
like, yeah, I don't know if you agree with me. Does that helmet thing not need to be tidied up? Like, there has to be a difference between deliberate interference and incidental interference. Like I would have thought what David Maher did there and what Cathal Barrett did the week before, when he was, I don't know, was he yellow carded or not? They're incidental. Like things sometimes hands will stray into their area and they hurt. Like I would have thought, was it 2013 or 14 when Podge Collins yanked the helmet off a Wexford player and he got away? Like that's what that's for. I think that rule has to be tidied up with a different incidental, maybe interference with the helmet should be a yellow card, maybe just be careful. But a deliberate has to be red. I think, I thought that was way too harsh a punishment for David Maher last week.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But fair play to Carlow, back up to the Leinster Championship next year. And if Westmeath and Antrim have showed anything this year, it's that you can come up and make a bit of a fist of it. And it's not like they haven't been there before. But Marty Kavanagh scored 1-8, Paddy Boland 1-4, Chris Nolan 4 points and 3 for James Doyle. On the Offaly side, Owen Cahill with 8, Keelan Kiley with 6, David Nally with 5, Charlie Mitchell with 1-1. Like they're moving in the right direction, Offaly. It was a sicknor for them, but at least they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you could say, was it 26 wides? They had enough chances to win 2 games, but I still think Carlow deserved to win it. But I thought their overall quality of hurling was much better. I thought particularly the way they got the ball into their forwards, they always looked to run at that Offaly defence. And but for Stephen Corcoran, the match wouldn't have gone near extra time. Some of the saves he pulled off in the first half were terrific. And I love the old school nature, some of those Carlow boys, the full back there, a small bit of a gut and the black boots. And I don't think he did even, and I don't think he even hit the ball all day. He got it and he just got it out to the men who needed to do it. And the corner forward is it Dooley, I think it is. He got the first goal. I can't remember his name, but Jesus, it was just fantastic. I know it was littered with mistakes and stuff that you wouldn't get away with at Liam McCarthy level, but in terms of pure entertainment value, it was excellent. Maybe it's a blessing for Offaly, maybe being a year too soon. Particularly, they'll be able to probably bring up an awful lot of the under 20s in there next year, and they won't be blown out of it. Johnny Kelly, assuming he stays on, will be able to put them in at a level where they can gradually improve and maybe get better. I think the thing that I maybe mentioned on Twitter, I don't know if I get your thoughts on it, but I think the McDonagh Cup, while it's a fantastic competition, it could be so much improved on. And I was talking to somebody in Thurles last Sunday, a leading Munster Council official, and he's of the mindset the same as me, that the link to the All-Ireland series needs to go, and that the McDonagh Cup, I think it's wrong that the McDonagh Cup final is over at the end of May. I think it's wrong that Kerry, Kildare, Down, Laois were finished in the middle of May hurling. That championship should be stretched out into June, with the final on All-Ireland semi-final weekend, the same as the Tailteann Cup final is on with one of the All-Ireland football semi-finals. Because there's no, as far as I know, there's no club championship starting in June. Maybe Kerry will, but I'm sure if Kerry had to maybe knock it back a week or two, they would do it. I just think the prize for winning McDonagh Cup is to get promoted to Leinster. I think the All-Ireland quarter-final is a bonus. I know this thing was added to it to get the new format through a vote in 2017 for the round robin. I think the time has come now to say, okay, that link has got to go. Maybe look at, make as good as competitive McDonagh is. Maybe extend it to 8 teams. Maybe what good is Kildare going back to the Christy Ring Cup again? Because they're going to win it next year and come straight back up. It's a lost year for Kildare. Meath, maybe get a few more teams up to it. I think you should, just because hurling has 5 grades doesn't mean it shouldn't be tweaked every now and again when it needs to be tweaked, if you know what I mean. I can't hear you there.
Sorry, I had myself in mute there. No, I agree with you. I don't necessarily think we need to pull the ladder up after teams. So I think, fair enough, one team, even let's say you were to keep the link between Joe McDonagh and the All-Ireland series, fair enough, one team, but 2 teams I think is excessive. But
even one team causes a delay, if you know what I mean. Then you have to finish it early. I just think it should be a separate competition, all of it. So maybe you do something like the Tailteann Cup, where if you win it, you get a perk for next year or something, but not the year that's in it, because it just distorts the calendar too much, if you know what I mean.
No, I definitely agree with you. I just don't, like, let's say that's ideally, I agree with you. Is it going to happen? Probably not a sudden thing. They'll have to slowly move towards it. But even if it was just initially that the losing team doesn't get into it, like imagine if Wexford and Cork had to play this weekend to get in as the other fourth place team or whatever. I mean, that'd be some cracking game this weekend, because all of a sudden Wexford have a bit of a positive slant after what they did against Kilkenny. All of a sudden, like, Cork haven't done all that much wrong this year. And people could say, oh, yes, they only won one game out of 4. But, like, they won one, drew one, and they lost 2 games by a point to the 2 teams that are possibly going to be in the All-Ireland final this year, certainly second months. Like, number 1 and 2 seeded teams in the country. They've lost by a point to each. Yeah. They've drawn with Tipperary and they've beaten Waterford. I mean, are you telling me that they're not worthy of being in an All-Ireland quarter-final or the shake-up for?
No, but I understand maybe where a lot of this is coming, that Cork are out and there's probably inferior teams going on. But I think if you started allowing 4th place teams survive, I think you could dilute the importance of the provincial championship. I just think it might take some of the dog-eat-dog nature out of what has made Munster so good this year. Like I think in time, maybe, look, we saw in 2019 the dog-eat-dog nature of the Leinster championship. I do think it's just cyclical. I think Leinster will, if Wexford get their ducks in a row, Dublin seem to be building again under. You can't tell me if you got Galway, Kilkenny, Dublin, and Wexford competitive next year, that there wouldn't be a fair battle for 3 spots. Like, I do think maybe Antrim and Carlow probably. I'm not sure how much better Antrim can get, but I'm sure they probably feel a second year they'll probably get closer. But and plus they'll have Wexford at home next year, which would be big help to them. Like, so. I just be worried. I'd just be worried about diluting the what would you say, the dog-eat-dog nature of if you had too many chances to stay alive, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so like last weekend was a huge weekend for 2 Tipperary managers who were operating outside of the county. So Darren Gleeson with Antrim, victory in Westmeath. Like, you know, it was all to play for there. So huge pressure. They got a brilliant victory away to Westmeath in Mullingar, and then of course Dara Egan under massive pressure, like huge pressure after to secure a victory at home to Kilkenny. I mean, the relief must have been unbelievable for him avoiding relegation, because they were going down if they didn't get over the line.
Isn't it mad when you look at the scenes in Wexford Park to think they had won a Leinster final? Like, we've seen it in soccer. Like, you get a bigger buzz nearly out of avoiding relegation than you do for winning a trophy. It's mad. Like, it's like, fair play to them, right? Like, when I saw it was 2-8 to 6 points, I said, "Oh my God!" Like, they're going to go out, and they're going to go out badly. Like, and against the wind too. Like, and then to produce what they did, like, was incredible. And that performance from Lee Chin was outrageous. Like, Jesus, like, when he's on it, he's nearly unstoppable. Like, isn't he?
He's a monster.
Yeah. Look, fair play to Wexford, and I did actually think, and I said it to a good few people last week. I said. People laughed at me. The ideal team for Wexford to come up in that sort of scenario, do or die, was Kilkenny, because it was going to draw the very, very best out of them. But, like, you know, again, because it's a traditional rivalry, there's a bit of spite there, and we saw a bit of it during the game too. And like, just fair play to Dara, and it'd be fascinating to see what happens now. I thought that interview with Lee Chin afterwards was very enlightening, in terms of there was no sense of panic or in terms of shifting the blame on anyone. Like, I do think, look, it'd be interesting to see whether Dara looks for an extension or whether Wexford give it to him. I think it'll be an interesting. I don't know what you think. Do you think he?
Well, I'd say that victory, like, he's the first manager since 1976-77 to score a successive championship wins over Kilkenny.
Yeah,
that won't be forgotten. Like, 2 years in a row, they've struggled with Westmeath. They drew with them last year. They lost to them this year. And, you know, the Knives
had enough chances to beat Dublin.
Yeah. To be fair though, Dublin were good, and Dublin were very good against Galway for long stretches the other day as well. So they're no bad team. They just lack forwards probably. But like, it's interesting his comments afterwards. Lots of people would hope that I go up the road tonight and I never come back down it. Does he have it in him to continue doing that? That, like, it's a fair old round trip every time he goes up and down. It must be the guts of 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, I know he mentioned his family there too, and then he's 3 young kids at home, and he's a principal in a national school. I think he'd love another year. I think he'd love to have a clean run at. Like, he had an awful lot of injuries this year. Maybe, like, there was probably guys playing last weekend that still weren't 100%, but they played nearly on pure gut instinct and heart and desire, and that's what got them through the game. Like, also helped by the fact that Kilkenny lost some key players to injury, and key players that probably are going to take their All-Ireland ambitions out. Like, it looks like Adrian Mullen's summer is over. Mark McKeown, that hamstring. TJ looks like the years are starting to catch. Like, still good, but not the dominant player he was up to maybe 2 years ago. So, but supposed to do have Mikey Drennan. It looks like they're bringing him back slowly. Like, so, like, we'll probably see him probably in an Ireland, well, probably in a Leinster final. They probably have no choice now. But
Mikey Drennan was the soccer player. Billy Drennan, sorry.
So it's fair play to Dara. Like at least if he does finish with Wexford, he goes out with his held high. He doesn't go out as the manager that got Wexford relegated to the McDonagh Cup, and it'll be a great memory for them. Like, whatever they achieve or don't achieve over the next while, like, to do what they did, and the reaction to it was incredible. Like, I just thought it was very odd for a do or die game for Wexford like that. There was such a poor crowd. It's gas the way supporters can walk away from a team that don't go well. Like, you think, was it 2018 or 19 that Saturday night, and the place is wedged down there for Wexford Kilkenny, and one terrace not even open last weekend, and a perfect day for hurling. Like, so
I've been over at Wexford Park a few times, and same as yourself, and it's unbelievable when it's humming. Do you remember that time that they knocked Clare when Clare were All-Ireland champions out of it in 2014?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, you'd swear it was the end of days in there. It was unbelievable. And
I wondered, I don't know if you did any research after. Was there a little bit of silly buggers with the delay of the throw-in by 10 minutes? Like, I would have thought if the place was full, fine, but like, it was barely half full. Like, so
9,000 people in there, and they had to delay the throw-in. Will you go air that? But look, well played if they did manage to pull a stroke there.
We just come back to Darren Gleeson. Like, fair play to him now. Like, that would have been a sickener now for Antrim to go back down again after 1 year. Like, now they get a second year, they get another block of National League and Leinster Championship games for them to improve again. Like, so, like, that's huge for them. Be interesting to see whether he goes again. But I mentioned a few minutes ago, I don't know what you think. How much more is there to come from him? Like, if Liam McManus goes, like, that's a loss. Like, where anybody else comes to take the pressure off Sean Elliott and Conal Cunning and Keelan Malloy, like, and it didn't seem like Keelan Malloy had his best championship campaign. Maybe other teams are wise to him now, but they need to you'd love to see them find maybe 1 or 2 more players to make that first 15 even stronger.
Yeah, well, for him, maybe it's the Dunloy thing that their season went on so long, and that could be the case for some of the others. But, like, if you just look at some of the scores in the 424 to 119 win over Westmeath, Conal Cunning at 1-9, he's a good age. James McNaughton 1-3, I think he's a class player. Conor Johnson, Owen O'Neill, Niall McKenna, sure, he was man of the match in the Joe Mack final there 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, Neil McManus, if he does finish up after being under oath since 2007, he would be a big loss. But I do think that they have a lot of quality players, and it's a place that's stone mad for hurling. So one of my teammates from Coola, Keane Waldron, he's playing up there at Ballycastle the last year and a half as well. And, it is an absolute religion up there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had a few more hurlers come through. And, I think it'd be brilliant if they could really, truly establish themselves, become really competitive in the Leinster Championship. So a point
you'd love to see. Like, I don't know, we might be dead and gone by the time the diggers get into Casement Park, but like, that would be even something for them. Look, there would be no stadium built probably in 2 or 3 years, but like, Jesus, just to have something, say, okay, we're going to finally have a home. Like, was as awkward. I wouldn't say awkward, but Corrigan Park, like, it's probably more than maybe what McDonagh Park would be in Enagh. That's probably what you're looking at in terms of a ground, like, so being your county ground, it's not it's suitable but not ideal, like, so.
Yeah. I suppose then the Leinster final is going to be Galway, I should say, against Kilkenny. And in some ways it is advantage Galway, even though they were desperate for about 40 minutes of this game against Dublin. I was in Croke Park for 12 points behind, staring down the barrel of the gun, and to be fair, they turned it around. Like, were they 12 points worse off at that stage of the game? No, because the 2 goals that they conceded were absolute gifts from the defence and the goalkeeper. So they never should have been that far behind. So maybe you credit them for pulling it back from that situation, and even Dublin too, because it would look like the wheels were falling off, and they got equalisers twice late on. But Galway, it could serve to be the perfect kick up the backside.
Yeah, like probably in terms of where they're just sauntering through Leinster. Like, I know that they had the game against Kilkenny, and I suppose if you were to be the positive from Galway is that the 2 tough games they had, they were down decent margins in the second half and they came back. So the spirit is good. Their fitness levels are good. They've just got to stop putting themselves in holes, like where they're going to get burned at some stage to find themselves down one of those holes again. But look, they're ticking along nicely. They're probably not overly, I don't know, Conor Whelan doing all right, but not setting the world alight. But then they're not playing the style of hurling that's getting the best out of them. Like, I think there's a package done in the Sunday game where Tom Monaghan was nearly having a long puck competition going for shots, and Conor and Whelan inside.
That's my big concern watching Galway. Like, let me just, I had the stats here somewhere. Like, that they had 52 shots over the course of the game, and they managed to convert just 26 of them. So 50% score in return. And a lot of those shots were from distance. Like, Tom Monaghan's a good player. He scored I think 3 points. Joseph Cooney scored 5. Very accurate in the way he was driving.
I still think the Galway team at their strongest has to have Brian Concannon starting. I just think you're asking a lot to take McLaughlin and
it must have been an injury issue because like, look at how well he performed in Nolan Park when, like, Conor Cooney isn't playing well at all. And his position is going to be,
he's a funny player, isn't he? He certainly goes every second year. Like, he's bags of talent, but from one game to the next, you just don't know what Conor Cooney are going to get. Like, he's a very streaky player in terms of confidence, I would have thought.
Yeah, but apparently he just dominates the Galway hurling championship. So you'd imagine within that panel he'd be very confident, but he's not playing great stuff. Conor Whelan's not playing great stuff. They were both taken off at Nolan Park earlier this year, and they got a draw by bringing on Liam Collins and Declan McLaughlin. McLaughlin looks like a good talent, but he was kind of nudged out of the action a nice bit by John Bellew. Evan Nyland, to be fair, he had a good performance, but they'll certainly have to improve from that game if they're to keep their championship going for all that long. The Tipperary footballers this weekend, they continue.
Just before we go into football, I know there was a message along the screen there about somebody was asking about permutations. If one is every team who plays Limerick is out on their feet. I think you go through the category or the body of work that's happening. Waterford were flat a week after they played Limerick this year, first half against Cork. Clare looked spent last year after. I think there's definitely something in that. Like, I don't know if it's physical, but I think you have to get such an emotional pitch to even be on par with Limerick. I think it's very, very hard to get ready for another game 7 days later.
That's some rugby rot talk there that I don't like coming into GA.
Emotional pitch.
Yeah.
But, like, is there not something in that?
No, there is. Like, you do have to get to a massive level. And
Limerick are there every day. So people, like, that's what makes Limerick so good. They're able to hit. They have a minimum level every week, every day to go out. Whereas other teams,
that's going to take its toll as well. Like, they're going to be battle weary. I mean,
if it's not this year, probably for next year. Like, so,
if they don't win this game, or if it goes to extra time again, it's going to be very hard for them to recover themselves because they've been taken all the way to the well every single day. And fair play to them the way they've managed to do it.
Yeah.
But, like, look.
But if you're to be very concerned about it, they've played 4 games in the championship and they've been getting incrementally better every time. Like, I know they've had differing results, but I think from the first performance against Waterford, they were better against Clare, they were better against Tip. they were better in a different way against Limerick. It was a different game against Cork. It wasn't as intense, but it was definitely a faster pace game against Cork because there was more scores. It was probably more athletically taxing against Cork last Sunday than it was against Tip, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, well then we'll move into the football then, just the final part of the show. Yeah. So Group 2 in the Tailteann Cup, Meath are going to face Down. That's a battle for the top, and Tip against Waterford in the other one. So Down and Meath, they're both on 4 points. Tip and Waterford haven't picked up a single point. The other two teams are guaranteed a place in the knockout. Tipperary are fighting it out with Waterford. How do you see this going?
Yeah, it looks for both teams that it's just a game to win, because I suppose for people who are not sure, that while the third place teams go through to the preliminary quarterfinals, one of them will lose out to make a play for New York. And at the moment, either Tipperary or Waterford look like to be the team that lose out, because even if Tip or Waterford get to 2 points, their score difference is so poor at the moment compared to the other level teams, that they're vulnerable. So, like, I think talking to David Power yesterday, like, Tip will probably realistically have to win by 15 points just to give them a chance of getting through on score difference. And that's a tough ask, because Tip have found scoring so problematic this year that just it's like it's only scored 6 points against Down. You think even a struggling team has got to score more than 6 points against anyone, like, and only scored 11 against Meath. I think against Waterford in the Munster quarter-final, scored 3-10, but it's only 13 scores. So he's thinking if Tip have to win by 15 points, they're going to have to score 25 times realistically. Probably going to be hard to happen. I just thought it was an interesting point David Power made yesterday to me. And I never considered it, that it's the first time in actually a generation, for all the maybe the players we don't have, whether we lost them through injury or retirement or immigration, we've no marquee forward anymore. Good, you think back to 25 years ago, Peter Lambert, then you had Declan Brown, then you had Conor Sweeney and Michael Quinn-Niven. We've nobody anymore. And that's no disrespect to the forwards we do have still there, but they're not of that caliber where they could nearly win a game on their own, or they could do something spectacular. It's just where we are, if you know what I mean.
As well, it's kind of a confluence of factors with Michael Quinn-Niven, deciding against playing, and Conor Sweeney doing the injury as well.
But when you don't have him, we just don't have the backup. But look, you just hope for Tipperary's sake they could end on a high, end the campaign a bit of some positivity, a bit of a win. But like, I think Waterford would be looking at this and thinking, lads, Tip are so vulnerable here. Let's finish our, like, Waterford's score difference is -20. They probably have a better chance of maybe winning by maybe 5 or 6, and maybe giving themselves a chance of squeezing into third place. So look, I think they'll be sensing Tip are vulnerable. And look, Tip are down. Stephen O'Brien, he's had to go for a shoulder operation after the injury he got against Meath. So big blow for him, and not big blow for Ballina, because like they're going up to senior football this year. He's probably looks like he's going to miss. He could miss maybe the early rounds of the hurling and club football championship. Lee McGrath looks like he's out. Cathal Deely is out. They're really down to the bare bones. It sounds like there's a good crew of the under-20 panel have been drafted in the last few weeks just to help ensure the numbers of training are high. So look, it's difficult at the moment. I'm fascinated. I'd be interested when the team is named on Thursday night, and the match is in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and then you look at the programme from the last time they played in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in 2020 final. I'd say how few players will survive. I'd say 2 or 3 is all that'll be left.
Mad.
Not even Dublin or Kerry could survive that, lads. They don't care. No team can survive a turnover. Regardless of the reasons for why those players are not there, with retirement, injuries, Aussie rules, whatever, no team can survive that level of turnover.
No, absolutely not. Well, look, we'll be back again doing it next week. A reminder, if you want to get the Nina Guardian, it's on sale at the moment. Shane, chat to you later.
Talk to you next week.